Good morning. I'll now invite the Deputy Speaker to grace us with prayers this morning.
Let us pray. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of the Legislative Assembly, now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations for the glory of thy name and for the safety, honor, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established among us. Especially we pray for the Governor of our islands, the Premier, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, Ministers of the Cabinet, ex-officio members, and members of the Legislative Assembly, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask for thy great name's sake. Let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us, and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us, and give us peace now and always. Amen.
Please be seated.
Reading by the Honourable Speaker, messages and announcements.
I have received apologies from the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, who's away attending a graduation, and from the 6th elected member from Georgetown, who will also not be here today.
Questions to Honourable Ministers and members of the Cabinet. The elected member for Northside to ask the Honourable Minister of Planning, Land, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure. Question number 1.
I recognise the Honourable Member from the District of Northside, who's to ask a question to the Honourable Minister for Planning.
Madam Speaker, I'll take my time so as to give the Honourable Minister time to attend to the chambers.
Most considerate member. The Honourable Minister is here.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to ask the Honourable Minister of Planning, Land, Agricultural, Housing and Infrastructure the following question standing in my name. Can the Honourable Minister state if the hotel being built by DART conforms to the planning requirements for height and the number of floors allowed?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the answer to the question is as follows. The Central Planning Authority reviewed the application for planning permission for the hotel and determined that it complied with the development and planning regulations in terms of building height. The CPA recognizes that the maximum permitted height of a building in the Hotel Tourism 1 zone is 130 feet or 10 stories, whichever is the less, as per Regulation 8.2e of the Development and Planning Regulations. The regulations define the height of a building as the vertical distance measured from the highest point of the building to the proposed finished grade. In the case of the DART Hotel, the applicant's proposal was to fill and grade the site such that there would be two covered basement floors below the finished grade. As a result, the height of the building is measured from the new finished grade, and the CPA at the time determined that the hotel complied with the permissible
building height of 130 feet and 10 stories.
Are there any supplementaries? Member from Northside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can the minister confirm that, based on his answer, that this hotel is likely to be 12 stories and not 10, with 2 being supposedly underground?
Honorable Minister for Planning.
Madam Speaker, I understand very well the way the question has been asked, and I refer to the answer that I gave, which is to do with the definition in the regulations. If I were to answer in layman terms, I would say if you went and inspected the building, you would find 2 floors which are under the finished grade and 10 floors that are above.
Member from Northside.
Through you, Madam Speaker, can the minister confirm that the finished grade from which the measurement will be taken to allow these 2 additional floors is how many feet above the original grade of the land? In other words, the contours that are recorded in lands and survey as to the natural contours of the land. How many feet above those has the land been filled in order to accommodate 2, and how wide is that fill? Is it just the hotel footprint, or does it cover the whole property?
Honorable Minister for Planning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that information I do not have with me, but I certainly will commit to the member to get that information, and I will get it today and let the member know. Just to advise, and I know that I am responsible, and I know that whatever information I need, I have access to get it. But this is not something, this part is not something that I, as minister, am very, very familiar with, because it was well underway when I became the minister.
Member from Northside.
Through you to the minister, would the minister confirm that this is in fact setting a dangerous precedent? And pardon me, Madam Speaker, but I need to give the minister a little background on why I put this question, and if you will permit me, so that you will understand. Because this has now transferred to Rum Point, where we have an individual who, because he wanted his house 10 feet above everybody else's, has filled his land 10 feet at the boundaries to the adjoining lot. Straight vertical, right? And the risk we run here is that anybody who comes here in the future now and wants to exceed the number of floors in a building simply have to raise the grade of the property to whatever height of floors that they want to get extra, and planning will give one permission. Because, Madam Speaker, if that's the likely scenario as I see it, then, Madam Speaker, I would propose that the minister bring an amendment to 82E immediately that says measurements must be taken from the contour, from above sea level, plus whatever the registered contour for that property is in lands and registry under the original survey.
Honorable Minister for Planning.
Forgive me. Madam Speaker, let me take the questions and comments one step at a time. First of all, I have myself observed the location just past the Kaibo that the member from Northside is speaking about, and I have inquired about it. What I didn't know and still don't know yet is whether that was done to have floors down below that, or whether it was simply done for height. But if it was only done for height, I don't think that that is actually because there was a difficulty with how high the building was going to be. I suspect that that landowner simply wanted to get that height. I don't know whether he was looking to protect from storm surge or what. But that doesn't change your point, I know that. All I'm trying to say is the comparison is not necessarily for the same reasons to have the finished grade be that. But I have inquired about that so that I could get a clear understanding. And not to try to preempt anything, but when this question came in was the first time I had personal knowledge of how the construction down there was being done. And I already have said, as soon as we get a minute, to my staff, we need to sit down and look at this to see whether this is something that we want to allow the regs to continue to allow, and to give me a broad view of exactly what any ramifications may be. So the question that the member asked, if I can confirm that it is setting a dangerous precedent, I can't answer that question the way he would like me to. But what I can say, Madam Speaker, is that the question, I have already asked the question, and when we make a clear determination as to the benefits and the drawbacks and all the other things, then certainly if it requires an amendment, then we will certainly do that. But I don't want to commit right away, flying off the handle, because I, as the member well knows, I'd much rather be from a very informed position to be able to know what to promote in that regard. But I understand exactly what the member from Northside is saying, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member from Northside. You're giving way to the member from Easton. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to let the minister know that I'm aware of the one at the Kaiwo, but the one that I was actually talking about is the condo development by Rum Point, where they're attempting to mound right to the boundary in order to create parking, in order to expand the building that they have there. Because they basically, but I think that developer did it at another development along 7 Mile Beach where he raised the same thing to get additional storage. So he got away with it on 7 Mile Beach. Now he's simply transferring the application and doing the same thing in Rum Point. But I am also very concerned about the property that you mentioned, because it is seriously infringing on the adjoining landowners where the fill is just falling into the land. My understanding is that the planning permission that they have does not allow that. It was only supposed to be 3 feet at the boundaries, and it's stepped in to get up to the feet gradually, which I understand was intended for the storm surge. But as you know, everybody else in Rum Point only raised the foundation of the building, not the whole lot. So,
Madam,
Honorable Minister for Planning.
Madam Speaker, just to follow up on what the member has said, and I thank you for the latitude you have allowed. What you have mentioned, I will make that part and parcel of the entire look-see and investigation to see exactly what's the best way to move forward, whether we need to make amendments, and if so, we will ensure that that's done in a speedy fashion. Thank you.
Recognize the member from Easton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, just ask the minister. We heard some time ago that there wasn't any total plan approval given for the Kimpton in the initial stages. The red card was not issued until much later in the development. Can the minister tell us if these plans were not reviewed and was this not pointed out to the ministry at the time?
Honourable Minister for Planning.
Madam Speaker, my understanding is that all plans were reviewed. But I'm not, I hope I explained this in the, no, I hope I explained this in the correct fashion. I have spoken to the Director of Planning about the issue to ensure that there are no anomalies with regards to the process itself. And what has been explained is that the department itself, and this is not to accommodate developers, but this is just process through the department itself, that they give various permission at various stages. And it is nothing to do with any lack of examination of the plans in the initial stages, but they give various permissions, and the reason why they have adopted that principle is so as not to cause undue delays in developments which wish to take place. But the process itself, and I was very careful in my deliberations with the Director of Planning, and I have been assured that the process itself does not negate, nor does it neglect, the actual inspections, or examinations rather, that need to be done to ensure that they conform, that plans conform with the planning laws and regulations. If the member wants to be specific about this one, I will make determination by getting a response from the Director of Planning, and perhaps I get it in writing if the member so desires. But when that came up initially, what I just explained is what the Director of Planning explained to me by way of the process that is taking place.
Member from Easton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, now that the minister said he could go further and ask some more further questions or discuss it further. Yes. I understand they give different stages of approval for these buildings to prevent hold up, and which I support. However, in this instance, I believe that the foundation approval was given, but MEP approval wasn't given until the 4th or 5th floor. Can the member in his research find out if that is the case?
Honourable Minister for Planning.
Madam Speaker, I certainly will do so and advise the member accordingly. I will.
If there are no further supplementaries, we'll move on to the next question.
The elected member for Northside to ask the Honourable Minister of Community Affairs, Youth and Sports, question number 2.
I recognize the Honourable Minister responsible for Community Affairs. I beg your pardon, I recognize the member from Northside who has to ask you the question first, although you have it in writing before you. We better follow the correct procedure. Member from Northside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to ask Honourable Minister of Community Affairs, Youth and Sports the following question. Can the Honourable Minister say how many persons are receiving Seaman's benefits from government as of April the 30th, 2015, and what benefits do they receive?
Honourable Minister for Community Affairs.
Madam Speaker, good morning. In accordance with Standing Order 23.5, could I ask that the question be deferred?
The question is that Standing Order 23.5 be suspended. All, I beg your pardon. The question is that the question for the Honourable Minister for Community Affairs be deferred by virtue of Standing Order 23.5. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. The question number 2 is, can I just check before I finish this question? Does the Honourable Minister wish to do the same for question number 3?
Yes, Madam Speaker, thank you.
Okay. Then I'll put, if you would just request for it to be put into it, then I'll just put it in all two rather than have to do it separately.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In relation to questions 2 and 3, standing in my name, could we, understand in order 23.5, defer those two? Thank you.
The question is that question 2 and 3, as it appears in the order paper, Thursday, 21st of May, 2015, be deferred in accordance of Standing Order 23.5. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Question 2 and 3 is hereby deferred for a later time.
Statements by honourable members and ministers of the Cabinet.
There are no statements for this morning.
Government business, bills, second reading, the appropriation, July 2015 to June 2016, Bill 2015. Continuation of debate.
I recognize the honourable member from the District of Easton with the continuation of his debate on the appropriation bill. There is 30 minutes remaining, sir.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, with the limited time that I have left, I wish to touch on some other matters that are extremely relevant to our people. Madam Speaker, one of those matters just happens to be crime. I note that the Premier, in his delivery, merely brushed over it on page 41 when he said, as we take measures to reduce crime, the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service continues its effort to identify and confront the security threats faced by the Cayman Islands. Madam Speaker, I believe that the country deserves a little more than that. I understand the quandary that the Premier finds himself in, being responsible for the financial aspect of the police department and nothing else. Well, yeah, we talk about the governor speaking about it, but I really need something from us. I understand, old boy. Madam Speaker, I know the governor has constitutional responsibility for it, but we continue to use that as a prompt. The people of this country couldn't care less who has responsibility for it. All they know is that we are responsible for them. That's all they know. And as such, they are right. And we must put pressure wherever it is to ensure that people are safe. There is very little more important to any citizen than, other than eating, their safety. And people are not feeling safe, Madam Speaker. And I'll let the Premier off the responsibility of constitutional responsibility, but certainly the responsibility to the people. We hold that. And there is too much. People are not feeling safe. And every time we deploy police officers in particular areas, in my constituency in particular, they move them and redeploy them. And crime spikes. Madam Speaker, I do not wish to speak on a matter that would make it sub judice, but the press this morning reporting, I don't know what it means about how nearly squandering a case or whatever the case may be. So I will leave it at that. But, Madam Speaker, people are emboldened. They feel like they're empowered by the lack of police presence. If there is no more, and Madam Speaker, I'm blaming the Commissioner of Police, if the resources are not made available to them, we need to make sure the resources are available. And if the job is not done, once he has the resources, we need to fire him. Get rid of him now. If we can, we, the 18 of us, can stand and say we provided the resources for him, and there are no better results, we need to fire him, whatever that process is. Madam Speaker, yesterday I spoke about having written the Premier, and for the benefit of all those who would think that I was fabricating stories, because it appears like the government's email is not working. And I should really give him one copy of this to give to the Premier, because it appears like he didn't receive it. But
Member, are you endeavoring to lead the document or just
No.
sharing it personally with the Premier?
just sharing it personally with him, but I can read it.
If you read it, I need a copy as well.
Well, he'll have get one off that, because I only have one, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, maybe I shouldn't read it. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt that those emails in the government are working. But in that same vein then, maybe I need to give the Minister for Works a copy of the one that I sent to him and he responded to, and has lost my email, I guess. And my email is on this one. So maybe I'll just share it as well. But Madam Speaker, that means there's no need for him to do copies then, if I'm just going to share it with them. Madam Speaker, let me go on to a couple other issues that certainly the government has said that they're going to be addressing in this year. One is the one man, one vote. Madam Speaker, I don't know what was the outcome of the big meeting last night. I understand it wasn't so big. Usually in West Bay, those meetings are big. Madam Speaker, I know yesterday the leader of the opposition invited the Premier to join him in opposition to the single-member constituencies, one person, one vote. Madam Speaker, I want to warn the Premier that if the Premier didn't learn in 2000 from his unforgivable lapse of better judgment, this time he will. If he now lapses into that again. Madam Speaker, in 30 years of leadership from the leader of the opposition, he attempted to be in cabinet 4 times, 5 times, and only served 1 full one. Madam Speaker, the members in these hallowed halls were the ones who entrusted him with leadership in this country. Not the people out there, the members in here. And every time they rescinded that trust. Every time. Now that speaks volumes. But every time, every person the leader of the opposition has come in here with is no longer I merely say it to say that his opposition to the one man, one vote may very well cause him or those who come with him their demise too. I say no more. Madam Speaker, that was for the Premier. You know what happened in 2000. And that was short-lived on the anniversary date of the election in 2001. Don't follow him. Bad will be your end. Madam Speaker, another issue I want to talk about is this liquor license that the Minister for Financial Services, and I'm sure he will speak to it at length, or I hope so, upon his rising to debate these matters. Madam Speaker, one of two things or both have to happen with the liquor license. The chairman gonna go, or the law gonna be changed, or both gotta happen soon. Both? Thank God. Because, Madam Speaker, I had occasion to meet with the chairman recently on a matter of complaint made by my family to the board. And when I said that the board has no authority to do certain things, his response was that the law doesn't say you can't do it. Now, if that is how we are operating the laws in this country, and Madam Speaker, to the Attorney General, my response to that was, but the board is a creature of statutes. And if the law that statute doesn't say it, you cannot do it in your capacity as members of the board. But more so as chairman. And if you are exercising a particular function on behalf of the board, as chairman, show me the instruments. There are none. we need to stop people leasing licenses without it being on the premises. The law is specific in it, Madam Speaker. The law is very specific. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, let me say that I have no interest in this. I don't sell no liquor, but I have a vested interest in when my family is being rights are being encroached upon, and they feel aggrieved by it, and they make a complaint to the relevant authorities in this country. So I go as a family member to see them right it. Not as a member of parliament, just so happen I am. Madam Speaker, let me go on now. I say to everybody, we're going to get the little piece. The last one is the Minister of Finance. And I am going to be maybe a little kind to him, and the others may get a little jealous, but so be it. That's their own pet peeve. They'll have to deal with that. Madam Speaker, the minister got up here and talked about and boast of no increase in taxes on the country, and his ability to get the government, the finances back in order. And I talked about that yesterday and how I believe we should have done that, which was stretch it out a little more. But be that as it may, the country must recognize that there is, even in 2016-17, we still won't be able to borrow money. It'll be a long while before we do that, till we get back in our senses or get it straight, so that our 10% don't be used up. Madam Speaker, what I want to say to the minister, in the interest of assisting small businesses, the time has come to increase taxes. As much as he claims he didn't have to, or the government that he's a part of didn't have to and followed his direction and his abilities to get revenue and not spend anything. Madam Speaker, there are many small businesses in this country that can stimulate the economy. And I won't talk about just two in particular, Madam Speaker, but there's a myriad of them. But in the interest of time, I see I'll soon be done. Madam Speaker, one, as I understand it, we have about 5 bakeries in Cayman that bake bread, standalone bakeries. And then we have the supermarkets with their bakeries. Madam Speaker, here is an opportunity for government to assist that industry. Increase the cost of finished bread coming into this country by 500%. I believe it may be even duty-free now, I don't know. And if flour is not duty-free, remove the duties on flour. It's already duty-free. Flour and wheat is duty-free. Madam Speaker, somehow and give them a prescribed time that is going to come into place. What that will do will assist those people to get new equipment and meet the demand. Some of them are struggling. I have eaten bread, the Cayman made bread, Cayman brag, the ones here. I've had all of them, and I don't see any difference in the bread. I don't see any difference in bread. And bun is bun. You think we had them in our days that you could import it? And remember the old gold medal sacks that you make sales out of? That's what that was for, you know, Madam Speaker. That's, you remember I tell them, you see our glory, you don't know our story? That's bread. Know the story of the bread story. And the reuse, wait a minute, stuff garbage, reuse, oh, that's him, the premier. Reuse, everything we reused. Even the condensed milk can was used for cups. And telephone across the classrooms as well. Reuse, only nowadays we talking about that. The only thing that was burnt in our backyards was no garbage collection. The only thing that was burnt were the leaves that we raked up. Even them brown paper bag, piece of brown paper that they used to tear off the old guillotine machine, even that was reused because my mother used to write on it with pencil, with charcoal, so I could go shop. And bandage you up when you got sprain. So, Madam Speaker, I invite the government to consider that. The other thing is, Madam Speaker, and the Premier will know this, maybe the rest of them don't know too much about it in the current time. No fault of theirs. Mangoes. Madam Speaker, the mangoes are in this country unbelievable. But they're seasonal. So let's put provisions in law that mangoes during that season cannot be imported. That will help our farmers. It will help our little small businesses. Every day, a number of us pass. There stands on the road with the farmers with their little small business. Mangoes in abundance. And they're competing with them imported from Costa Rica. That's things we can do. Those are things that I would like us to do. I recommend that we do. Madam Speaker, there are the areas that we can do that as well. Now, Madam Speaker, one of the other areas that I wanted to move on to was that of the national conservation in this country by the Minister for the Environment. He thought he wasn't going to get his little piece either. Madam Speaker, I am hopeful. I wait with bated breath that the new enforcement has come of age and we have new enforcement officers who have had experience before. Because, Madam Speaker, Finance Committee, we shall discuss that a little further. But, Madam Speaker, we see too many times personal grievances in those areas being played out on the wrong floor. Madam Speaker, I have always supported the conservation, especially of our marine environment. I'm no tree hugger. I've said that many times. Because I understand extinction is forever. But, Madam Speaker, After many years of complaining, I went straight to the minister, whom I shouldn't even have to go to. But it appears like that's the place to go. And I should say that, you know, I can't even blame the ministers for not responding directly when they say they're passing it over to their technical people. At the very least, you should get some response. Madam Speaker, I have complained bitterly about the enforcement of the marine environment, the enforcement, for additional enforcement to be in my constituency. The response was that they didn't have the powers to arrest. Now, the minister recently gave that to them 3 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, under the law. And I want to hear what the results has been since then. But I also want to hear how they can infer that members of this honorable chamber is encroaching on the law. And that has to be trashed out in front of the people of this country, and in particular my constituency. I'm not using privilege here, Madam Speaker.
Member, can you just repeat that for me, please? The last sentence.
I said that has to be trashed out in front of the public, and in particular my constituency through these hallowed chambers. Madam Speaker, the mere fact that I'm in the same location as you are does not mean I'm there for the same reason you are. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, one thing I do is I save things that I believe are of very great importance. And sometimes it has to be divine intervention that make me save those, Madam Speaker. And that's a good thing, you know. Sometimes God knows best. You think he don't know how to direct you? He knows exactly how to direct you.
Sometimes?
Well, all time. I guess some of God's greatest gift is unanswered prayers now. Yeah, because if he answered all them that ask him, you can believe, Madam Speaker, you would have had some cleansing in a long time. I don't know what kind of cleansing, but it would have been cleansing. Madam Speaker, how much time do I have left, Madam Clerk? 1 minute? 20 minutes? 20? 20? Oh, Madam Speaker, thank you, because I thought you were saying 20. I didn't hear the zero. I thought I'd heard the zero on the back, you see? Madam Speaker, I would lighten that up by saying that my dad told me one time that he was in New York and he and another guy got a taxi. And this was when my dad was young, in the 1920. And the taxi driver said, $2, sir. And the man pulled out $20 and gave him and walked away. And I said, but, wait, we got to wait for a change. He said, Lester, don't embarrass me here now. You know zero don't mean anything where we come from. Anyway, Madam Speaker, let me just close then by saying to my colleagues, what I see that is afoot in this country. Madam Speaker, I wonder if we are that blind that we can't see that the little squabbles on the small issues that we engage in, that they are engineered to have us fight each other while ignoring the bigger issues. You see one just played itself out here this morning with the number of floors and how we get away with that. That's what they're doing, Madam Speaker. Properly engineered to keep us blind to the bigger issues. But you know what we need to do is listen to some of the recommendations, such as I gave to the Minister of Finance, increasing them taxes, so that we can help our little people. Because if we increase the cost on mangoes and or ban mangoes during the seasonal, people can start planting them in their backyard, you know. Okay? The other thing, Madam Speaker, is that I've always said to the Minister for Works, for planning, one of the things I want to see in this country is to allow Caymanians who are building their homes to be able to build on a little efficiency onto that house. Madam Speaker, I ain't talking about no apartment. I'm talking about a little room, one bed, or two bedroom. And Madam Speaker, the trickle-down effect of doing that, allowing them to put that under one roof, is cheaper for them to put it under one roof. Number two, you get some young Caymanians who do the internet thing, and there are 50 people that subscribe to him or her, and people from overseas book these things on short notice, and on short-term rental they call it, and the wife and family is right there. The whole family is there. We say our greatest assets happens to be our people. That's how we can get them interacting with our people. $75 a day to stay in there. Madam Speaker, you know what that means for a family? They don't even have to pay their mortgage. They may even be able to pay for their children's school fees. It takes that burden off us. But because it's a single family home, you know, in most, you can only have one driveway up to it and one carport. And we got 5 people in there driving car and 5 cars on the driveway. Just make these people drive up too. Or they rent it out long term, $1,500 a month. Can nearly pay their mortgage or pay their mortgage in many instances. That's the kind of stuff we need to do, Madam Speaker. You know, you have been BVI. They do it there all the time and rent it out short term to tourists. That's the kind of stuff we need to do to help our people. Madam Speaker, if we continue to fight each other and ignore the big issues that need to be addressed, such as our people, the big issues that need to be addressed to help our people, we deserve to lose our country. We deserve to lose it. We need to stop complaining that others are taking it over. It is we, it is us who have the responsibility to deal with it. There's not one, Madam Speaker, not one of us in here, with the exception of the Attorney General, that was not born of Caymanian parents. Not one. Not one. Remember where we're coming from? Because we need to make provisions for those who are going into the future. And you know what? They come from us too. The same way we came from Caymanian parents, those who will the future of this country will come from us. They will be our direct descendants, the same way we are directly from other Caymanians. Let's keep it going. Let's provide that which we believe is in the best interest of these people. Let's watch out for those engineered things that will keep us apart. Madam Speaker, I thank you, and I thank members for their attendance, even though sometimes they didn't want me to say what I had to say, or their thoughts, or anyhow. But, Madam Speaker, I do appreciate the ability to debate, even though the Premier dropped it on me in the middle of the night. But I have reminded him on more than one occasion since last night of the error of his ways. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the fifth elected member from the District of Georgetown.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I rise to add my contribution to the throne speech, the strategic policy statement, and the budget address that were given by the governor, the premier, and the minister of finance last Friday. Madam Speaker, I stand here proud to be a part of this government that can bring economic growth, focus on jobs and prosperity for these islands, and who has the recovery of the Cayman Islands in sight. Madam Speaker, you've heard that the economy is on the way to recovery. We're expecting a 2% growth. We've also heard that unemployment is down as of December 2014 to 4.7% from the 6.3% that we inherited when we took office. Madam Speaker, my congratulations go to the entire government and the civil service for sound planning and disciplined implementation that has occurred over the last 2 years. Madam Speaker, in 2013, when we were invited to be a part of this coalition government, we were promised that we could be productive members with a voice, and so far, the Premier has kept his promise, even when at times we don't always agree on how to get there. Madam Speaker, what I'm most proud of from what was highlighted in those 3 documents and those addresses was that this government is taking on some of the legislation that previous governments ran away from or were incapable of bringing to the fore. That, I think, says a lot about the current leadership that we have. And by that, I mean all the ministers and the backbenchers working in tandem. Because 2 years ago, we could have been in a very precarious position had we not chosen to come together. And I think the country is better off for it. Like I said, Madam Speaker, whilst I have my own personal goals that I'd like to achieve while I'm here, and whilst I don't always subscribe to everything that's a priority of the progressives, we have chosen to operate as a true democracy within our ranks. And we all have the right to voice any concerns and bring our opinions. And I guarantee you, Madam Speaker, and the people of the Cayman Islands, that it's not all a one-way street. Madam Speaker, some of my concerns over some of the topics that we've brought forward, although I can live with them, will come out, no doubt, in some of the debates as they come online, because I think it's prudent on my part to talk about some of the reasons why I don't wholly agree with some of the laws and policies we're bringing. But that by no means detracts from the fact that I agree that we should bring them, that I'm proud that we're bringing them, and that Cayman, in my view, will be better off for them. And I think, Madam Speaker, that I can speak for the other independents, but I'll put a caveat in there that they have every right to disagree with me and add their own 2 cents. But I think that we have all contributed to this government because we believe that it is the right government for this period of time that we find ourselves in. And that I remind myself and my colleagues that we believed that this was the best choice for the country, given the players that emerged from the last election. Madam Speaker, one person, one vote. National conservation law, the discussion on Sunday trading, the cruise ship berthing, the waste management system, education, pensions. All these things have been passed over by past governments, including the UDP. And I think that the fact that we're bringing them to this honorable House. We're having the sometimes unpopular discussions is a testament to where we think the government needs to go and the country needs to go. But Madam Speaker, there's still a lot left to do. And at this moment in time, we're looking at the big picture and we're trying to prioritize. But by no means can anyone afford to rest on any laurels, because we have lots of work to do. And if history is any indicator, we have about a year really to do some of the hard work and to take the licks that come with that to get some of these things achieved. Because in the past, election time, electioneering and campaigning starts about a year out. Madam Speaker, I believe that some of the ills that we now face are a direct result of bad decisions by the last administration and also a time when that administration was in power before. Madam Speaker, everyone talks about unemployment and crime, but nobody looks at some of the root causes. Bad political decisions made only for political gain end up being tragic decisions for countries. And I'm talking in particular, Madam Speaker, about rapidly introducing citizens to this country in one fell swoop. Madam Speaker, nobody in this room, nobody in this country can tell me that some of the ills that we face today are because of those decisions, both at the top end and the bottom end. Madam Speaker, we're committed to bringing jobs to this country. We are taking the hits because we can't deliver them fast enough. But I'd like to have people pause for a bit and think about how the injection of people into this island has taxed everything, including infrastructure, including social services, including the ability for young Caymanian professionals to rise up. So, Madam Speaker, the drain on our resources is a direct result, in my mind, of bad political decisions. And I would encourage my colleagues to continue the fight, to plan to, and to come up with a plan to counter this. Madam Speaker, the civil servants' cost of living adjustment and the reduced import duties to 20%. Privatization, whistleblowing legislation, standards in public life legislation, reduction in fuel duty that will be 50 cents down from where we started in a few months. Madam Speaker, these are all things that we hope will provide some relief to our fellow Caymanians. This is also something that in previous years we were told that you couldn't do because government coffers needed the cash. But Madam Speaker, we've come up with inventive ways for cost savings in order to do this. So again, I applaud the Minister of Finance, his team, and all the other government members and civil servants that have contributed to solutions, workable solutions that end up as benefits for our people. Madam Speaker, you've heard the Premier in his delivery of the strategic policy statement talk about the Legal Practitioners Bill. And this is something that when I was on the other end of the table as a practitioner, for as long as I can remember, has been passed down the road by governments because of a myriad of reasons, and I can't stand here and try to determine what some of those reasons were, but I know that partially it was because people didn't understand what the bill was about, so they just chose to ignore it. Partially, it was because we as a country felt that our people were not being given fair shakes. And I subscribe to that, having been in the profession. But I don't think that it's everybody doing it at the same pace and just trying to keep Caymanians down. And the only way that we can get to the bottom of who's doing it and who isn't is to have dialogue. And like our old people say, straight talk. Because if you choose to ignore a situation, you're not helping anyone. And what's happened in those 15 years since this legal practitioners legislation was being bounced around by government after government is that a generation of Caymanian lawyers have paid the price. So, Madam Speaker, forgive me if this is something very personal to me, even though I don't practice law anymore, and I don't intend to ever practice law in these islands again, at least not in any major capacity. But it's time that we had that dialogue and just basically laid the cards out, even the unpalatable bits that people don't want to talk about in open settings. And I think, having been very involved in this process over the last year, that all parties now realize that the dialogue needs to happen, that there are shortcomings in our system, and that people are prepared for whatever reason, maybe not all altruistic, to have the conversations and to now put in place the necessary steps to ensure that Caymanians get access to the profession, get properly trained when they enter the profession, but most importantly, Madam Speaker, that they get the opportunity to advance not just to the first round of what people call partnership, which is salary partnership, but all the way to equity partnership, where they share in the spoils that has become the Cayman dream that has almost demolished the Caymanian dream. Because lest we forget, Caymanian parents have sometimes squeezed blood from stone, begged, borrowed, and stole to ensure that their children had better opportunities than they had. They had aspirations, and they continue to have aspirations. And most, if not all of us here, are Caymanian parents of Caymanian children. And I certainly don't want to ever tell my children that their elevation is only halfway up the ladder and the top rung is for somebody else. So, Madam Speaker, whilst I point out the legal profession, because that's the legislation that we are looking at, let's not lose track or sight that every other professional sector has to do their part. We have to start looking at our school leavers, our college graduates, and start planning well ahead of them actually graduating and showing up at our doorstep looking for a job. The professions have to absorb our Caymanians, and the members of this House have to ensure that they're doing so, be that with a stick or with a carrot. But again, having the straight talk and the dialogue that causes no fallout. Because, lest we forget, we're all in this together. We need a certain amount of imported labor, and they need a certain amount of our Caymanian professionals. It's not only is it good corporate social responsibility, it's the law, Madam Speaker. This is what you're supposed to be doing when you show up here. And again, Madam Speaker, I am not one to ever advocate for putting Caymanians in a position that they have not earned, that they are not capable of doing. But likewise, I strongly detest when people would say that Caymanians don't have the exposure and the training, Madam Speaker, to be able to get to those lofty heights. Because when they say that, they are the ones failing, because they have not done what the law says. And if that's ever an excuse, whoever is the recipient of that should stop the conversation, get up, and leave and say, come back when you start following the law. Madam Speaker, that piece of legislation has the ability to change lives, not just the lives of the people that would be in law, but also the lives of Caymanians. Because if you want to talk about trickle-down economics, that's where that disposable income would come from. That and other professions like it. And unless Caymanians are at the top at some point in time, those economics go somewhere else. Those economics go to others than Caymanian children. And Madam Speaker, I don't have to lay out a plan or a map that shows that if year on year Caymanian children aren't getting the same opportunities and level of education, that pretty soon new Caymanian children who do have that will be at the top of the food chain. And it's not fair that everyone doesn't have proper access to the same room at the top. So I'm glad that the dialogue has started. I'm glad that both the legal associations, the Caymanian Bar Association and the Cayman Islands Law Society have come to the table willing to embrace the changes that this government has suggested. And I'm glad that we can further this discussion, and very glad that the Premier, Minister of Financial Services, Minister of Education, and all the others that are working on that legislation have been steely in their approach and have not taken any excuses. And that's something I'm very proud of, Madam Speaker, as part of this government. We need to look at a plan for the future. We need to preserve wealth amongst Caymanians, because if the bottom drops out tomorrow and all the money leaves, we're going to be in dire straits, Madam Speaker. This government is also looking at, and we've just had the discussion as recently as 2 weeks ago, the upskilling fund and immigration accreditation, which was not mentioned in those documents, and because of certain budgetary constraints. But I won't let my colleagues forget those things, because things like the upskilling fund will fuel some of the policies that I've been working on along with the minister in education and employment. Madam Speaker, TVET, that's another topic area that has been bounded around and bounced around and put to the back burner and everything else for as long as I can remember. But I'm proud that the Minister of Education, along with her colleagues in Cabinet, have seen fit to put together a council on TVET to recognize that giving skills to our young Caymanians who may not be as academic as others is a great equalizer, because those skills will make them employable, promotable, and business owners. Madam Speaker, for too long, we've looked at
Honourable councillors, it's an appropriate time for me to take the 15-minute morning break.
yes, ma'am, I'm at your indulgence. Thank you.
We'll reconvene at 12 p.m.